Good afternoon, everybody. It is March 3rd, our very first meeting of March 2021. Great to see everybody. I'm going to quickly share this guy. We'll get started. There we go. Welcome back. Tonight, Patricia Shaffer, Rotary Peace Fellow, will be talking to us.
Amanda, I can do an introduction if you'd like.
Thank you, Chris. I was just going to say I was looking for the introduction stuff. Chris Jones is going to do the introduction, but I'd like to start and make sure that we hit any. I want to see. I was doing so good. I got the bell to work and then I lost it. First of all, I would like to remind anybody who's planning to attend PETS that is next week, and you should be registered by now if you have not. My understanding is that Uta, Nikki, potentially Deb, and David are registered and planning to attend at least part of it. I will be attending some of it as well. Looking forward to it. It seems like it's going to be a really good presentation and a lot of people involved this year because it's virtual. Deb and I attended the district grants seminar last week. So I'm taking over our St. Patty's Day celebration to talk about district grants and what needs to happen there. And that's all I have to share from the district perspective. So I will open the floor quickly because we're running a little bit behind tonight. I'll open the floor quickly for any happy bucks. Mr. Keith.
Yes, I have a happy buck in that today, Carol, my wife got her first COVID shot. Had to go down to bottom end of Naples to get it, and I get my second on Friday.
That's awesome. Congratulations.
I got two. One, Michigan opens as of Monday for me to get mine. And let's see, the second thing is I'd been recently home to visit my dad. And I was meant to be back last week, but he ended up in the hospital with very high blood sugar. And the good news is today, everything seems to be that he's very good and everything's okay and he's got everything managed. So life's good again.
Awesome. Are you still out in Iowa, Jerry?
No, I got back Sunday night here. He was doing good enough that he had to take over. So I had to get out of the way, or otherwise he wouldn't take over.
I was going to say, you're going to have to get out of the way.
Yep.
Any other happy bucks to share?
Not a happy sound, but I still am registered and don't know if I'm number 5 or 5,000 or 50,000 on the list.
We're getting there.
Yep, someday.
Tom, we've missed you. Welcome back.
Yeah, nice to be back.
All right. With that, thank you guys for sharing. I'm going to turn it over to Chris Jones, who's, oh, sorry, Jerry, did you have one more?
Yeah, one more. It's actually warm enough here to almost be motorcycle weather.
I drove home.
There's a lot of white stuff around yet and a little bit of ice on the roads, but it's almost good enough to be motorcycle weather.
Yeah,
Almost.
Really nice.
It hit 50 today, so.
Yeah.
Mr. Porras.
It's always motorcycle weather here in South Carolina.
Yeah.
That was nice.
All right. Thank you guys very much for sharing. Mr. Jones, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can introduce Patricia.
Thanks, Amanda. So we're really excited tonight to have Patricia Shaffer with us. Patricia is a Rotary Peace Fellow, and she's actually out of my home district, District 7680 in Charlotte, North Carolina. She is a member of the Rotary Club of Charlotte, which is the big club here in our district of about 250 members. And Patricia has done so much relative to peace to help not only Rotary, but our world, and especially our youth. Linda had a bio on Patricia. I'm not sure if she's shared it with everybody or not. And if not, we can get it shared after the meeting this evening. But I want to tell you a little bit about Patricia that I know personally. So I've had the pleasure of knowing Patricia for probably 6 years now, Patricia, 7 years, something like that. We've gone through a couple of RILA groups together where I learned a special name for Patricia, which I won't mention on this call. But nonetheless, she's got a really, truly Rotarian heart, and really values the work that Rotary does relative to peace. Now, Patricia, before I turn the meeting over to you, I want to introduce you to our club. Our club is a unique club. We are an e-club. We formed as a focus area in motorcycling. So we're called the E-Club of Motorcycling Rotarians. And so we have folks on the call here from all over North America. And we're kind of unique in that we have full members where they are truly active members. And then we have almost as many associate members, which in Rotary terms are oh, I've lost the term. Help me, Jerry.
Honorary.
Honorary
Honorary
members, right?
but
we
push it a little bit further than that, so they're almost active.
So we are the first club in Rotary that actually has done this, and Jerry did a great job in getting it pushed through RI. So meet all the motorcyclists that are here from Canada all the way down into Mexico and Guatemala. My battery is running low on my headset, so I'm going to turn it over to you, Patricia.
All right. Well, thank you. Thank you, Amanda, and thank you for the introduction, Chris. And I have to tell you, I'm both energized and a little bit intimidated to be talking to the E-Club of Motorcycling Rotarians. Knowing that I was going to speak to you, I was thinking about what are, ideas or memories or experiences or thoughts that always stand out for me and motorcycles, or about motorcycles. And so the first one is when I was in business school, I said, when I finish business school, when I get this graduate degree, when I get this MBA, I'm getting myself a motorcycle. Like, this is my big goal. This is my big reward. And I had plans, and I did research, and I looked at photos, and I studied. And then my friends did an intervention, and they said, Patricia, we've ridden in a car with you. And I don't know, you motorcycle, not so sure. Think twice. So that was one Debbie Downer moment in my life. But then the second one is I live in Charlotte and have an office in Charlotte, but I also have a getaway place in a town called Tryon, North Carolina, which is about 90 minutes outside of Charlotte. And so when I heard you say motorcycle weather, like one of the greatest sounds where I live, and I live on this curvy mountainous road, one of the greatest sounds that always occurs when the weather gets just right, either in the fall or the spring, is to hear this enormous line of motorcycles several times a day that just, choose my road as the road that they are traveling together as a crew on. And the sound of it is magnificent. And then the third one is I noticed you have a member named Uta. And one of my best friends is named Uta. She's from Germany, but she lives in Switzerland. And when we first met, we were in this course where you had to show your favorite photo of yourself. And the photo she showed was of Uta on a motorcycle traveling across Europe. Of course, she was stopped when the photo was taken. But I just, I have this image of this long braid and, her long legs stretched out on this big, beautiful, robust motorcycle. So I guarantee you that just speaking to you has brought, images and thoughts to me that doesn't often happen in a presentation when I have to make it. So thank you for those joyous thought moments. Thank you. Thank you. And thank you for being Rotarians and being innovative in the structure of your club. As Chris said, I am a Rotarian. I'm also a Rotary Peace Fellow. I'm also a global ambassador for the Institute for Economics and Peace, which is the strategic partner to Rotary. And I am a Rotary Positive Peace Activator, which means I'm one of just under 30 people in North America who are charged with being helpful with regard to connecting with Rotarians and giving them ideas and ways and support to be connectors and conveners in their communities around peace building, peace education, and peace building. So I have a lot of sort of special heart and appreciation for what it is for Rotary to have peace as one of its 7 areas of focus. So tonight, what I really want to do, and this is actually unusual for me, normally if I would do a presentation, I like to do a little bit more of a show and tell, but knowing Chris and knowing I was going to be talking to you tonight, I just felt like it needed to be a little more free spirit. So I'm just going to tell you a story. Now it's a story, it's got a few chapters, put into the time that I have, but I think the story is really about, from my perspective, what does it mean to have Rotary have peace as an area of focus, and why? And what is it there might be to say about that that often people don't know. That's one. Two is the special focus that I have, and that's really, as Chris said, on the intersection between peace education, and young people. But again, that relates back to, well, what does that mean for Rotary? And then the third thing is to sort of give you a sense of how my own journey in this matter started in 2012 when I was a Rotary Peace Fellow, you know, and let's say from humble beginnings, this journey that I'm going to tell you about started to what's become a big initiative in zones 33, 34 as of today. And that big initiative will really start to kick in, so to speak, in the next month or so with a big ta-da at the end of 21-22. So the Rotary 21-22 year. So a lot of people don't know, and I certainly find that as Rotarians, new Rotarians come on, a lot of people don't know what a tremendous lengthy history Rotary has with peace and peace building and being an advocate for peace. And so the way I have learned the story, and I try to study it and, you know, sort of open new pages on this every chance I get, is, believe it or not, Rotary having peace as an area of focus is not a new thing at all. Indeed, Rotary's advocacy for peace, it's beginning to be a voice for peace, and peace on a global scale goes way back to just before World War I, when Rotary was advocating for the importance of maintaining peace in the world. So think about that, you know, over 100 years ago. And then another kind of big phase of Rotary's engagement with peace and peace building comes before World War II. And it's voice and advocacy, again, for, you know, being peace builders globally, or advocating for peace globally. And then after World War II occurs, Rotary, it has a very special seat at the table when the United Nations is actually formed. It was one of the few nonprofits that was there helping shape and influence the charter for the United Nations. Keeps evolving, the story keeps evolving. And when I was a Rotary ambassadorial scholar, that was a premier program for Rotary that was identified as a way to build peace, because Rotary was sending, you know, young people, usually just out of college graduates, around the world on these ambassadorial scholarships. And I was sent to Egypt. I was sure I was going to Paris, France. You know, Rotary selected differently, but, you know, they were very wise when they did. It was a perfect choice. And I just remember the interview and the Rotarians telling me that my job was to be the best ambassador I could for the United States, but not a promoter of the United States as we have all answers, you know, we're number one. It was to be a promoter of the United States as a friend and a listener, and to take everything I heard and listened to and learned from being in a place as far away and different as Egypt and bringing it back home. So that was my job as a scholar. So it was very much a, you know, peace building kind of trip from Rotary's perspective. Then fast forward again, and about 15 years ago, Rotary creates the Rotary Peace Fellows program, with the idea that every year between about 80 and 110 people would be selected as Rotary Peace Fellows to either pursue a master's in a conflict resolution and peace related field at a, you know, select university and Rotary Peace Center around the world, or if you're already in the work in some way, go and do a professional development program and really stop and think and reflect and get inputs from scholars on the nature of your work and how it could be better. I was sent to Thailand, and at the time that was the only professional development program of the Rotary Peace Centers program, so the Rotary Peace Fellowship. And since then, even in the last year, there's now been a new Rotary Peace Center for the professional development track opened at the University of, well, at Makerere University in Uganda, which is a really exciting development. But I go over there chosen because I lead a nonprofit that does a lot of work in 3 countries in East Africa that are really associated with histories of conflict: Uganda, Rwanda, South Sudan. Okay, and you say any of those 3 names to most people, and they immediately think of long civil wars, histories of conflict, Idi Amin, the genocide in Rwanda, South Sudan being the newest country in the world that was born out of a 5-decade-long civil war. And that was what I was sent there to reflect on, that work. Turned out to be a beautiful reflective experience, because while I was there doing all this sort of, let's call it downloading, a question that I had to put to myself for my Action Peace project was, the research shows that if a new country is born out of civil war, it is highly likely that in the first 5 years of its new life, it will devolve into civil war itself. And so you can imagine South Sudan, newest country in the world, poorest country in the world, least educated country in the world, highest levels of maternal health issues. I went, aha, I'm on this Peace Fellowship and I have just learned that perhaps I can't make a difference here. So what shall I do? We're training teachers, we're training, we're educating students, we're building schools, whatever shall I do? And the question I had to consider on that fellowship was, well, I can draw down, is in reduce my footprint. We can hunker down and hold where we are, or we can double down. Because the research also shows in these situations, if you invest in education, if you invest in health and so on, you can actually do things that, to the best of your ability, help stabilize this new country. In the end, while many people were pulling out, we doubled down. And today we continue through, through 2 outbreaks of civil war in the last 10 years. We have not only maintained our education presence, but increased it. And we're educating about 6,000 students in South Sudan right now, you know, in a place where 90% of the adults where we work can't read, and 70% of the people in the country can't read altogether. So that was a life-changing moment, courtesy of Rotary and thinking about peace. But this sort of coincidental thing occurred while I was in Bangkok. There were some Rotarians from New England who were in Bangkok because that was where the Rotary International Convention was being held this year. And while they were there, they visited the Peace Center where I was, and they were floating this idea that they had been inspired by past President Seguji Tanaka, whose theme in his year was peace through service. They were inspired and they said, hey, just look at the reality. Rotary has 1.2 million members. Rotary has a long-standing history with peace. Rotary has an enormous footprint with young people between Rotaract, Interact, RILA, RI, First Act, Early Act, you name it. So why is it we would have something like the Rotary Peace Fellows program, but we wouldn't have a peace education initiative that can be available with the support of Rotarians around the world in the communities where we live? And I was approached because I have a background in leadership development and organizational development, and various permutations of education, to see if they could be helped to make some headway on this. They've been talking about it for 2 years. And my first reaction was, that's just crazy. That's just crazy. I mean, peace, who's going to take it seriously to the extent that you could, do peace education on a global scale? Gosh, think about all of the challenges and headaches with that. Technologies are different around the world. Education systems are around the world. And I come from a corporate background that's all about scale, big scale. I said, that's crazy. Good luck with that. And they were just persistent. They were just really persistent. And they were persistent, not just with me, but with others they were talking to. And they'd been at it for 2 years and said, please just pilot something. Just take the lessons from the Rotary Peace Fellows program, take what's out there on best practices in peace education, and just try. Start somewhere. And so the try and start somewhere started in Vermont with about 15 kids. Okay. And then, as been preparing for that, and as that little test started, there started to be more and more information that really helped me and all of us see, wait a second, there really, really isn't. And I assume there was a lot of work already out there. There really, really isn't a peace education program that is replicable and scalable and available to young people. Oh, wow. Rotary really does have all of these assets, and Rotary really is a network for peace where it wants to be. So let's see. So Chris Jones would never tell you this himself, but we went ahead and he had started a bigger, broader pilot that was still modest in size in District 7680 in Charlotte in 2014. And I remember, he would never tell you this, I can. he was one of the first voices to say, this matters, this is important, this has the potential to be something big within and with Rotary's support. And so we started with 3 high schools and 18 students in 2014 and really said, how do you have a structure? How do you have a structure of learning that it doesn't matter if it's Delaware or West Virginia or South Sudan or the Balkans, you can bring peace education to the local community level on an extracurricular basis and have Rotarians supporting it and even being trained to be mentors in this regard. And lo and behold, this thing called NewGen Peacebuilders was born. And as I said, it was born with 18 students in 3 high schools in Charlotte, North Carolina in 2014. Thank you, Rotary. Rotary at the local level, the district level, and with global grants has now spread that structure, that form of peace education for young people inspired by the Rotary Peace Fellows program to North Carolina, Virginia. There was one run in South Carolina. We'll be back. Texas, California, Bolivia, Argentina, South Sudan, the Balkans, the Western Balkans, and now we can say Western Balkans and Southeastern Greece because of a relationship with a US State Department funded organization over there. The program is going to be available in 8 different countries. Oh, and I forgot Lebanon. Lebanon, there's a program starting up in Lebanon. And in fact, I was in a Zoom yesterday with Rotarians in Lebanon for a program that will be done with university students there, 10 universities, while outside, you know, there are demonstrations in the streets, tires are being burned, the economy is in free fall. And what they see is that part of their hope for the future is really equipping young people in Lebanon to, in essence, be Rotary Peace Fellows at the community level. So what is it? Basically, it has some components to it. It has workshops, okay? So live or virtual training. It has resources that students can tap into. And we've had students end up writing capstone projects on the intersection between hunger and peace, mental health and peace, environment and peace, racism and peace. It has speakers, guest speakers, but importantly, it has the support and training for young people to imagine peace projects, develop the peace projects, and be mentored by trained volunteers like Rotarians to actually implement their peace projects at the local level. One of my most beloved inspirational projects is, and there are many because they cover the gamut, many different topics. But one of the most inspirational to me is one called No More Hotspots, which started when in the training experience, a group of students said, well, we're kind of interested in human trafficking awareness, okay? They research the issue, they find out that there's a thing called human trafficking hotspots. So places where young people, and especially young women, are most likely to be approached and recruited and lured into human trafficking. And then they say, wait a second, some of the neighborhoods we live in are in these hotspots. We didn't know that. And then they keep researching and they learn, the state that they live in has mandated that there be human trafficking awareness instruction in high schools in the state, including health sciences classes that they have to take. And then they say, we've never had one of those classes. We've never heard a presentation. This is new news to us. And they work and they get teamed up with a master educator as a mentor who's also a Rotarian. And they end up creating a curriculum that has been endorsed and is available during Human Trafficking Awareness Month, which happens every year in the United States in January. And then they get recognized by the Education Committee and the state legislature that mandated that there be this education, okay? And then they get connected with a nonprofit, a very respected nonprofit in the field of helping women leave human trafficking. And they raise nearly $2,000 to actually contribute to that nonprofit. Now, I tell you that story because I know in my heart that peace is something we all aspire to. And the idea that young people can be equipped with these tools to craft a present and a future around peace is a nice idea that, unless we're careful and unless we give concrete examples, can be seen as kind of a nice idea that really can't go anywhere. And I just want to tell you that in 2015, the United Nations called on the world to think about how you create a culture of peace in your own community. And what they said was, if you want to create a culture of peace and sustainable peace, it starts with education. You have to put young people at the center, and we consistently leave young people out of the conversation in the mix, even though if your age is 15 to 24, you are the largest demographic in the world and the fastest growing demographic in the world. And if you are 15 to 24 in the United States, you're called on to do service. You won't be taken seriously for a college scholarship or anything if you haven't done meaningful service, and you are hungry to be taken seriously as a potential peace builder. It floats your boat. It excites you. You are ready to be civically engaged if people will support you and give you the tools to do that. Now, the last thing I want to say is, so here's this journey, right? 18 students, 3 high schools, an idea that originated with Rotarians up in New England, that morphs into locally supported peace education to produce peace projects and all these kind of organic places. Wherever somebody wanted to do it and support it, it was, it could be done. And then the twist becomes this. Along comes Rotary International Director Peter Kyle, who is the director for Zones 33-34. 9 states, Washington, D.C., the Caribbean, into kind of 3 countries right up at the top of South America. And he says, what is my experience base that could be a jumping off point for Zones 33-34 when I'm director? And he said, well, let me see. I was the chair of the Peace Centers Committee. I helped bring the Institute for Economics and Peace strategic relationship to Rotary. I'm a believer in peace. Rotary has peace as an area of focus. Rotary has this big footprint and long relationships with youth programs. What if we could really scale this? What if we could really make a mark with this and use the strength of Rotarians at the local level across a big geography to do something in a disciplined way? And this is sort of the end of my tale, there was born, starting with this idea and officially in July 2020, Youth and Peace in Action, engaging 100,000 young community peace builders for Rotary Zones 33-34. And where that has evolved to is 22 districts late last year saying, that's a good idea, we're kind of in. This year, 16 districts saying, yeah, we're so in that we're prepared to provide financial support for it. We want Rotarians trained to do it. We'll be sort of an army of peace builders reaching out to local educators, especially in places where there's Interact, but also where there are Interact and or other service clubs like Boys and Girls Clubs and National Honor Society and Model United Nations and so on. The whole thing is really getting underway right now, even as we speak. We have working committees that are formed with some of the 16 districts who said, yeah, we'd be serious about being in on that. In September, around International Peace Day, September 21, there will be, let's just call it a very large scale virtual event to get communities excited about peace education where the Rotarians are providing the support. In the fall, there will be an online certification program, and we're talking to technology providers right now about making it mobile app enabled, where students can get an initial certification in peace education and peace building. In the spring, a smaller set, but still a lot of students in these various locales, these districts, will have the opportunity to do live virtual facilitated peace project training and implement their peace projects. And then in May 2022, there will be a united celebration that celebrates the peace projects in all these various places that have been produced by young people, inspired by, guided by, supported by Rotarians. So that is how this, has become this a la Rotary. Start with the grassroots, leverage the relationship and networks and create something great that's consistent with something that Rotary stands for, peace. So I hope I haven't gone on too long and turned your ears into cauliflowers, but I am more than welcome to entertain any questions and just celebrate who you are as Rotarians. Thank you.
Patricia, that was a great presentation. Thank you so much. And we really value all the work that you're doing for Rotary and for the youth and the difference that you're making. So.
Thanks, my pleasure, Chris. And really, thank you for being a guardian, a coach, a supporter, and inspiration. You never hesitate to pick up the phone when I call and say, Chris, we're about to do this. What do you think? I don't know. Although that's not how a phone works anymore. It's more like this. Yeah, thank you.
I think our district 5890 is a member of the Peace too, right?
District 5890 is very active in Peace. Yes, I mean, obviously they're not part of zones 33, 34, but District 5890 is very, very active in terms of positive peace and peace building.
I think it's a Gwen Corolla right now, right?
Yeah, and in fact, we did what we're talking about here in NewGen Peacebuilders with 200 interactors in an accelerator summit in Houston, and then a follow-on 12-week program in Houston. And actually, some of the students in that follow-on program qualified because of their peace projects to either win the Coca-Cola Scholars Foundation Award, which is a $20,000 award that goes to 115 students out of 93,000 applicants, or there's a fellow right now who's being considered for a full ride Gates Foundation scholarship to go to any university in the United States he wants, partially based on his peace project.
Wow.
Yeah, no, 5890 was very inspirational.
Yeah, thank you. That brought me to Rotary actually, because my husband was a district governor in the same year Chris was. There was classmates, and my husband, he is right now the chair for the International Convention for the Host Events. And he brought me actually in Rotary, Christopher Schneider. So he's my husband.
Who is your husband?
Christopher Schneider.
Oh my goodness, yes.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, yeah, fabulous. What a force.
Yeah.
Excellent.
The name Chris.
In all of your travels, is there one particular thing that sticks out that was completely counter to any preconceived notions you had about the place you were going? I know it's kind of, I should have prepared you for that question before.
No, it's all right. It's a really great question.
So for example, so I was I was an Arabic translator in the army, and I spent some time in Iraq. I speak Arabic pretty well, and I got chosen to do some civil affairs work, doing some women's and children's clinics. And I thought that I was mishearing this woman out in the Anbar province in the middle of nowhere when she was telling me that she needed to speak to a gynecologist because she had an IUD. And I'm like, in my head, I'm translating this completely, like I'm very, very like lost because it doesn't, context wise, it didn't make any sense to me. And that was in 2003. And to me, in my mind, what I knew of Iraq, it was backwoods. It was so behind the times on everything. And I had this preconceived notion that everybody I ran into was going to be lower educated, that they wouldn't have had access to a lot of things that we would have in our very perfect Western world. And I think that was one of those moments that really sticks out to me as, a kind of a reality shifting moment for me to hear her explaining this. And I finally came to the realization, I'm like, oh, no, that is what I'm hearing. So it was just one of those moments. So I've had a couple of those in other places, but that one really sticks out.
I misheard you there, Amanda. I thought you were saying she needed to talk to a gynecologist because she had an IED.
I know, I thought that too.
An intrauterine device, sorry. IED open something to talk to us about, but no.
Yeah, but so I'm so glad you shared that, and let me build on that. Let me leverage that. So, okay, I can't answer the question on the fly. A place that I've gone that most surprised me, or was the opposite of what I imagined. But what was the year when we had the eclipse, and it was just like 3 years ago, and we were all excited about the eclipse, right? And we're all preparing for the eclipse, and every year, the State Department brings a group of students to the United States from Iraq, high school and early university students. And it's a really competitive process, like 5,000 students from Iraq apply, and they bring like 100, 150. And they make a tour mostly down the East Coast. And that year they were received by the International House in Charlotte. And we were asked if we would bring NewGen Peacebuilders together with these students from Iraq. Okay. And one of the exercises we did with them, and so what you just said really reminds me of this, one of the exercises we did with them is, what do you imagine about the other? Or what did you imagine about the other before you've now met? Okay, or as we're meeting. And then we took them through an exercise where they actually discovered that whether they were in Iraq or in the United States, an issue of concern that everyone had in common was education equity. You know, because if education for all is, you know, the ticket in so many ways, what do we each see about gaps? And it was fascinating to take them through this process and have them arrive at a common conclusion, you know, that here we are in the States and they're there in Iraq. But one of the exercises we did was, so what did you imagine? And those students, I'm gonna start sobbing. The students from Iraq said, well, we imagined that people would hate us. They imagined that young people in the United States would hate us, and that they would think that, you know, we're all trouble, we're all terrorists, and they would hate us and not be very friendly. That's the opposite. Okay, so we were afraid to come. And then the students from the US said, oh, we imagined that everyone would be bearded, there wouldn't be any girls on the trip, and that they would hate us. Okay. And then the Iraqi students said, oh, and we imagined that every young person in the United States is beautiful. And we said, what's that? Where'd that come from? They said, well, we've seen them in the movies and the television shows. They're all beautiful. So we imagine they're all so beautiful. And then there was this beautiful, heartbreaking, horrific, never to be forgotten moment where the students in the United States realized how little they knew about the students in Iraq. And the students in Iraq knew everything about these students in the United States. They studied them, you know, that say the culture followed them. And it was this magical moment that's, well, magical, very hard moment that said, somehow we've been in the same experience together. Mm-hmm. You know, the war in Iraq, you know, the conversations around Iran, so, you know, our countries are intertwined, and yet we know so little about each other. And then that's where we went off into the journey about what was important to them in their lives. And so I learned through those two groups of students, again, the impressions that we have and how little we know about each other, even when we're inextricably entwined.
I found, so I came home when I was over there, my husband was here with my son, and what he was being fed by the media about what was going on the ground was so incredibly vastly different from what we were actually seeing on the ground. And I don't mean military tactics, I don't mean operations that were happening, but I mean, like, every day I was out and about for 12 to 14 hours. I had my weapons slung on my back. I didn't wear my helmet because I was more approachable that way. Multiple times I was protected by people that, you know, just happened to be walking by, and that was my reality. And it was, there were things peppered in there that weren't so great, right? But that was my reality on a day-to-day basis. And my poor husband is sitting back in the States watching what he's being fed. And what we were seeing, what people were seeing back here was so incredibly vastly different from what was actually happening on the ground, that it's interesting for you to bring up that the kids in Iraq are seeing glorified movie television style America. And what we are being told of Iraq most of the times is sensationalized, you know, hyper over exaggeration of certain scenarios so that it looks like it's everywhere. And so that's one of those things that in all scenarios. And I think especially for people outside of the United States looking in on us, if all they're really seeing is that, just like my host mom in Spain, who thought we all ate hamburgers and we were all going to be fat. You know, those are just the things, those are the perceptions that we have to break. And that's why it's so important what Rotary does with the actual face-to-face, whether it's virtually face-to-face or it's face-to-face where you can shake hands, right? But to break down those perception barriers, because that's really, I think, maybe I'm speaking out of turn, but for me, like, that is the number one barrier to peace is perceptions. It's not necessarily beyond that. You know, if you can break that first step, that's where it all you all start to realize that you do have those similar experiences and you do have the same fears about a lot of things.
Well, just as an aside, there is an exercise that we do in NewGen Peace Builders that's all about perceptions of violence and peace, and then what happens when you start looking at the facts. And so that's really beautiful. I've never heard anybody say it that way. The number one thing that you can address or break down if you want to build peace is perceptions. I'm going to put it on my mirror in the morning in red lipstick or something like.
I mean, it's not even just peace. It's just in general, right? In any situation, if you go in with preconceived notions of how it's going to be, that's going to paint your perception of how the meeting is going to go or whatever. So
yeah, correct. Thank you. Yeah, Emilio. I see Emilio's got a question.
Yes.
Yeah.
I wanted to just say about the misconceptions of the United States, and still within our own country, we have so many misconceptions. I moved from the West Coast to South Carolina, and I had friends from Arkansas that were telling me, why are you moving to the South? They're gonna hate you there. They're not gonna, they're telling me all these things, about the South, how bad it was gonna be, and how nobody will like me, and I would have to be, just guarding myself all the time. And I was afraid, very afraid to come into South Carolina because, fear of the unknown, fear of what if, and all these things. But it's just like anywhere else, in the world. But, I moved from Las Vegas, and then you were talking about human trafficking. Well, Las Vegas is one of the hot spots for human trafficking from different parts of the world and different parts of the United States, from LA to Las Vegas. While I was working at the airport, I saw it, people coming from Northern California being trafficked as, as a human beings to work in Vegas, at different clubs, and you wouldn't believe it. Of age. It's just incredible. So absolutely, we still have a lot of work there.
Yeah. Well, and thank you. I think I'm glad you mentioned that. And thank you for sharing that perceptions, sort of Las Vegas, or you said West Coast. So I assumed you were going to say California, but, to South Carolina. We actually once had cohorts running in North Carolina, South Carolina, and California. And so we asked the cohorts what they imagined about the students in the other cohorts. And the students in the Southeast said, they're whack. Aren't those like, they're just like crazy out there, right? Are they even like disciplined? And the students on the West Coast said about the students in the Southeast, probably not very educated and have a lot of prejudice. Yeah. And so, in fact, one of the things we see happening in the future because of these online versions of NewGen Peace Builders that we're able to do is how to have cross cohorts across states. Or one of our new challenges is students from urban settings and students from more rural settings, and how do we cross that divide using NewGen Peace Builders and virtual formats. Yeah, so thank you for that example.
Chris Jones, you had your hand raised earlier.
I was going to expand on the story that Emilio was touching on. We had an exchange student in our district. I think it was the 13-14 Rotary year, and she was here from Fukushima, Japan. And before she came, her parents and grandparents told her to watch out for the Americans because, of what the Americans did to Japan back in World War II. So she came with all these preconceived notions. Well, keep in mind that that was the year that Fukushima had the tsunami that hit. And she was in school at the time that the news started broadcasting it. And she was in the cafeteria. And I just remember how she was telling the story, but all the kids in the cafeteria came and gathered around her, and then they took their Coke cups and walked around the school and started collecting money for her to send back to her family. And that was such an inspirational moment. And she told that story to a media person at the end of the school year to relate the fact that the youth exchange, cultural exchange program that she went through was probably the most transformational thing she would ever go through in her life. And she now appreciates the fact that you can't go by perceptions. You really do have to go by your personal experiences and really dig into the situations and understand what's going on around you.
Yeah. Yeah, that's so interesting. What an amazing story.
But it's the same, you know, I supported my husband, I think 5 years for the Ryla camp every year. And of course, we invited also the youth exchange, and there's another Rotarian she made every year. She made like a Olympiade for them, you know, that they can on the water, more games and coming together and everything. So, and about this work, I get more in touch with them. And the funny thing is, when I met the students from Germany, actually, I remember one guy, he thought the guest family will pick him up with the horses, because in Texas they have still horses, something like that. It's a funny, but you can see what the students thought before they came to the US and how close. And I have still contact to some German students. So every time when I go to Germany, I'm met with some of them. They're living in the same area I live or was growing up. And it's interesting what the life changed also after the program. It's amazing what this had for an impact. And it's a really great and successful story, right? For Rotary and for the young people.
So our Rotary district, Patricia, is Canada and the US. So I was, yeah, so it's like this part of Michigan, but not Detroit, and then this part of Canada over here. And so when I was an outbound exchange student in 97. And so there's a group of us that still get together, and we're about half and half Canadian and Michigander. And it's interesting even now, like we get together once a month, and there's still things that are said like, hey, I didn't realize you guys did that over there. And we're literally, we touch each other, right? Like, and it's even so far as like our Canadian friends, like to me, they're just Michigan East, right? They would not like to hear that, but to see that they even have, they've even, you know, formed their own opinions and their own perceptions of who we are, just literally across the bridge or under the tunnel. So yeah. I just found that interesting, and that it continues, and we have all been exchange students to somewhere else. We should know better, right? We've all went through that exchange student experience, and we still do it even now as adults, like when we get together.
Well, there's something, can I just say, there's something about your club here, this E-Club for Motorcycling Rotarians. I mean, I know I wrote down some of the places you are. Okay, Michigan, got it, wrote it down. North Carolina, South Carolina. I feel like there's a Florida in there. I will walk away from this evening just thinking they seem so connected. They seem so sort of bonded. There's such a good vibe. How have they done that virtually? I think that's it. Maybe you're all gathering and writing together somewhere, but I think it's really interesting because there's actually research right now. It came out of it was done by a UK researcher, but the research is more broader than the UK. And she was able to demonstrate that because we've all been online now for so long, mostly, right? And we have access to so much information, fabulous. We have so many connections, fabulous. But because we don't have the real world as our reference on a regular basis anymore, your perceptions start to be what you have access to online, your perceptions of what's really going on in the world. And of course, we all know, if you've seen, you know, documentaries or films like The Social Dilemma and so on, that the information you get in many ways now is pre-selected, because there are 5 technology companies that basically influence the flow of information, you know, by observing us all, you know, Facebook, Google, Yahoo, Microsoft, and I always forget what the 5th one is. And so we're being plied unless we really work hard at it with information that sort of matches our perceptions of the world anyway. And so it can be easy to be online, but not really be connected to people, or be on Zoom and not really be connected to people. So I just want to say, you know, whatever you're doing virtually as an E-Club here, it's pretty powerful. It just feels different to me than some sessions or conversations I've been in.
We cheat a little bit. Jerry Jackson down there. Jerry. And so Jerry was the president of the club that sponsored my exchange in high school. So we had that bond for a couple of years. We've known each other. And Rory, who is here somewhere, was also part of that club. And then looking around, We have quite a few people that were a part of District 6380 before we all split out and went other. And then Jerry also, everybody in this club is also a part of the International Fellowship of Motorcycling Rotarians, American chapter. So at some point in time, I think with the exception of maybe me, everybody in this group has ridden with somebody else in this group. So
And we're working on correcting that, Amanda.
I know.
As soon as you buy a
So,
bike, even if it's an
I'm
Indian,
working on
okay?
it.
Even if it's an Indian,
Even
we'll
if it's
take
an
you on a
Indian,
ride.
oh no.
Patricia, I got a very important question from very early on in your discussion.
Yes, sir.
Is your friend Ute in a Rotary Club?
No, she's
You need to
not.
tell her about us. You need to tell her about us, okay?
You're
Because
right.
we can put Ute 1 and Ute 2 on the screen real fast.
Yeah, we
Right,
actually,
what-
we have a, I don't know if he ever joined as an associate. We keep trying to get him to join as associate, a gentleman who joins us every once in a while at midnight from London.
Yeah,
And
you're
you'd be a
right.
great associate member, Patricia.
And by the way, I have the long legs too, so you can tell her.
I had a,
Yeah, really.
honestly, if I showed you a picture, yeah, okay, there you go. No, but if I showed you a picture of my Uta next to your Uta, you would swear that they were related somewhere or half sisters or something. Yeah.
Maybe, you never know.
Yeah.
So we don't have a requirement that you ride. That was just the one had in common when we started, right? So still allow me to stay because I don't have a motorcycle.
Yeah, just
changed-
think, Patricia, you can tell people you're in a motorcycle gang without ever actually having to own a motorcycle.
Seriously, I can wear the image. All right. Anything else?
So we planned actually last year, we planned to get together in Texas, by the way, but Corona killed all the, the rally. It was a little bit sad. Everything was
But-
set up and then short before we had to
The
stop.
plan is that we're all going to meet at the International Convention in Houston next year.
Yes.
That
But we still got Maggie Valley coming up.
We got Maggie Valley coming up, but like the big one that I think we're all going to try to get to so we can actually all meet in person is the Houston International Convention. Uta and Deb are in the Houston area.
So we
Well-
are organizing everything for them. Yeah.
Well, okay, so when I'm there to do peace things at the convention, I will look forward to seeing you roar in to the convention. So, all right. Is there any other way I can be helpful this evening? Any other questions, or I don't want to keep it too long?
It was very inspired. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you. Appreciate it.
My
Sure,
pleasure.
we definitely appreciate your time. Thank you very much for putting that together and for coming. I like the interaction that we had when we were able to ask questions.
Excellent turnout, by the way.
Yeah, and that's what I told her. I said her reputation must have preceded her because I even forgot to send out the reminder email. So
Bill.
I was looking at the attendance from the last couple meetings, and I think we've hit a peak over the last couple months.
So you're allowed
Yay.
to join us whenever you'd like to, Patricia.
Thank you very much. It was really
Not
fun.
just for the attendance, but because we enjoyed your time.
Got you. Thank you. I really appreciate that. So thanks to Chris, thanks to you, and truly, sincerely, it matters that you're in this club. It matters that you're Rotarians with the spirit that you have. And every day, especially when it seems like, there's that book, Things Fall Apart. When things are falling apart, all the more reason for Rotarians to stay together. So bye.
For sure.
Bye.
Thank you, Patricia.
Take care.
All right, Chris Jones, can I pick on you to lead us in the four-way test as a thank you for bringing Patricia tonight? Will you please lead us in the four-way test to close out the meeting?
Absolutely. Of the things we think, say, and do, number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? And number five, is it
Will it
fun?
be fun? Thank you guys all very much. Chris, thanks again for bringing her. That was fantastic.
Thank you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Great meeting, everybody.
That was
Yeah,
awesome.
many thanks. Take care.
We're all very blessed to have people like Patricia out there in the
Sure.
peace circle.
For sure, for sure.
Thank
You
you
guys
all.
stay safe, be safe, do smart things.
Jerry, stay a couple minutes. Amanda, do you
Sure.
mind if Jerry and I stay a couple minutes?
I
Sure.
don't mind. Uta and David, I don't necessarily have anything to discuss tonight. Do you guys have any presidential things that you want to discuss? We have Amelia as our special guest in the president's meeting tonight.
Well, this is a president's meeting? Excuse us.
We just set aside after this meeting this week, every month to see if there's.
Emilio, I can send you a message and we can get in a private meeting real quick.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay. Bye, guys.
Bye now.
Fine, goodbye.
Love you all
Like,
very
stop
much.
recording.